What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 221 on Check This Out, 221, February 21st, 2018. What are the odds of that we have episode 221 of hashtag AskGSM here today on the date 221? Am I the only one that finds this amazing? This will probably never happen again. Nonetheless, guys, welcome back to the show where every single Wednesday I answer your questions from Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. If you want to send in a question, tweet me on the Twitter machine with the hashtag AskGSM at WrestleRant. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Leave a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last, but certainly not least, drop your question on this very video in the comment section down below. I'll include it in next week's episode. So nonetheless, guys, I'm on a short time leash here, so we'll get started. Joe M. from YouTube. What does Andrade Cien Almas possess as NXT champion that NXT officials seemingly never saw in Austin Aries, Tyson Kidd, Tyler Breeze, or Ty Dillinger? I know he's an amazing wrestler, but so are Aries and Kidd. Plus, Aries is an elite mic worker, and Kidd came along in that department during his NXT run. Came a long way in that department during his NXT run. And I know Breeze and Dillinger aren't as good as Almas in the ring, but their popularity amongst the Full Sail fans far exceeded Almas's. First of all, timing is everything. Timing is everything. With Breeze and with Kidd, they came along at a time, or at least got super popular at a time, when Adrian Neville, similar name, when Adrian Neville was the NXT champion. And he held that belt for pretty much all of 2014. From February of that year, we're closing in on the 4-year anniversary of NXT Arrival, which RJ mentioned in a question that I'll get to later on, which I was going to watch it anyway. Usually I watch that show on the anniversary of it because it was such a great show, and it obviously changed NXT forever and the way they do live specials and stuff like that. But nonetheless, going back to my original question, my original point, is that when they were in the main event scene in NXT, you already had Neville. They weren't going to take that belt off Neville. The end game the whole time was Neville and Zayn for that belt at our Evolution that December. They were not going to interrupt that long, that lengthy reign of Neville just to give it to Kidd or Breeze for a month or two, which would have been nice. I'm not saying it would have been a bad thing if they did that. It would have been cool. Kidd especially deserves some sort of token, some sort of, reward for the career resurgence that he experienced in 2014. I guess you can kind of say that he got that with the WWE Tag Team title win. I think it was Elimination Chamber when he and Cesaro won the belts in 2015. Beyond that, though, he never really got a token run with the title in NXT. That kind of came on the main roster a few months after the fact. But yeah, Kidd would have been a cool champion, but they were already in the midst of that Neville title run. With Breeze, I absolutely agree. I think he should have been NXT champion at one point or another. But after that whole program with him in the title picture in 2014 ran its course, nothing really made sense after that where he could have won the belt. Because after Neville, it was Zayn, who then immediately transitioned into a feud with Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens would go on to drop the belt to Finn Balor, who was obviously a much bigger deal in the summer of 2015 than Tyler Breeze at that point, who was on his way out of NXT. So you couldn't have done it at any point during that time. So it's a shame. But yeah, Breeze would have been great for a one-off title run. For Ty Dillinger, I remember talking about here on the show and people bringing it up to me. What if Ty Dillinger, unseated Bobby Roode down the road as NXT champion? Would not have been the worst idea because remember Bobby Roode and Dillinger did have that feud in late 2016, and the whole premise of that program was that Dillinger could never win the big one. He was always losing on the takeovers. I don't think he's won a single takeover match. He did beat Eric Young on his way out in a steel cage match on NXT before he got promoted to the main roster right after WrestleMania last year. Other than that, though, he has been winless on the takeovers, and not has been. He was winless because he's not in NXT anymore. Dillinger, I don't think you can make that great of a case for him not being the NXT champion. The guy was a jobber for a long time, and he was another guy that was on the brand, and although he was popular with the 10 stuff, and he still kind of sort of is, but not really, he came along at a time where there was so much star power, even more than when Kidd and Breeze were on the brand in 2014. Dillinger in 2016, there was not a shot in hell of him ever holding that belt. Maybe with the Bobby Roode thing, but then again, like I said, as soon as people like Nakamura went to the main roster, and as soon as Samoa Joe went to the main roster, people were asking me, is Dillinger finally going to get a shot? Well, then enter Drew McIntyre, enter all these other guys, Adam Cole, baby, all these other top-tier talents, and Dillinger was never going to get a run with the belt. Again, I know he was popular. That's what you mentioned in your question. Like, so why didn't he get a title run? Andrade Almas, I know he wasn't too popular early on, but he has come into his own as a money act in NXT. Austin Aries, again, wrong time. Really just kind of bad timing, where he was never really brought in to be the guy anyway, the same way that people like Nakamura were, and Joe, and Owens, and Drew McIntyre, and a few others. Aries was always going to be a utility player for that brand. I know he beat Baron Corbin on a takeover, he beat No Way Jose on a takeover, but he was brought in to elevate those people. Despite beating them, he was brought in to help, give some experience to a Baron Corbin and a No Way Jose. And later on, Hideo Itami, before, they both got hurt and the program abruptly ended. And I know he worked with Nakamura, and he doesn't really need to give the rub to Nakamura, but he was not going to win the championship on the show as long as Nakamura was there. Even if Aries didn't get hurt and immediately went to 205 Live when he was cleared to compete again. So again, for a lot of those guys, I think it was just bad timing. Aries was never going to be the guy anyway. None of those guys were ever positioned to be the guy. But especially in Aries' case, when they signed him in early 2016, he was a big, addition to the brand. I love Austin Aries, don't get me wrong. And I really wish he would have gone on to do more in NXT and on the main roster and whatnot. But they never brought him in to be that guy in NXT. With Andrade, to go back to the basis of the question here, the guy has always been a great worker. I know Aries has been as well, and Aries, his mic skills far exceeds Almas's, because the guy can't talk for shit. He only really knows Spanish. He knows English, but he's not very coherent. That's why you have Zelina Vega. Vega and Almas are a money act. Without Vega, Almas would not be NXT champion right now. And I love the guy. The guy was a great as a heel even before she joined him. But he couldn't talk. So he was never going to become champion. He didn't really have that overall package for the NXT title. Enter Zelina Vega, and the guys, they're just a money act together. They scream dinero together. So, as a couple. That's why he's NXT champion, not just because of her, but she adds a lot to his act. He was already a tremendous wrestler. I mean, look no further than him and Gargano in Philly. The best NXT match that I've ever seen anyway. I think of all time, and I've seen them all, so I think it is the greatest NXT match to date, in my opinion. So I think that's why he's a champion over a guy like an Aries or a Kid or a Breeze or a Dillinger. NXT, maybe not more so in the early years, but really in recent years, could have benefited from a mid-card belt, and I think all of those guys that you mentioned, Aries, Kid, Breeze, and Dillinger, would have held that championship at one point or another, but because the brand does not have a secondary title, they kind of missed out, which is unfortunate. His second question, I know you, along with just about everyone else, has been annoyed with WWE's tendency to make multi-man, woman, tag team, etc. matches, but would you be happy with a multi-team tag team match for the Raw tag team titles at WrestleMania if it results in the Revival winning the tag team titles? That should be the end game, but I just think that screams laziness. I'd rather get the multi-team tag team title match at WrestleMania with Raw rather than with SmackDown. It seems like we're headed in that direction with SmackDown, and it really bothers me. Because first of all, it should be on the main card. The Usos have never been on the main card for WrestleMania, ever. They have been on the pre-show at WrestleMania's 27, 28, they weren't even at 29, wrestled on the pre-show as well at 30, 31, 32, and 33. That's ridiculous for a team that's been around for so long and is so great. It's not like they're fucking Primo and Epico here. That's just absolutely ridiculous. So that's got to change this year. They could do that with a multi-team match at WrestleMania with the Usos and the Bludgeon Brothers and the New Day. And I like the New Day, but you could just put them in the fucking Battle Royal. You don't need a multi-team match with the SmackDown Tag Team titles too. That to me is a waste. I would rather see the Usos versus like Owens and Zayn, or the Usos versus, the Bludgeon Brothers, which they've been teasing anyway. I thought we would get that at the February pay-per-view. Obviously not. But if they did the Usos and the Bludgeon Brothers straight up, That's fine too, because their matches in 2014 were fucking awesome. So I'd be fine with that. For the Raw tag team titles, I'm more okay with them doing a multi-team tag team title match because nothing else makes sense. What, fucking Titus Worldwide again? Who cares? We're probably getting that on Sunday. They might have even confirmed it by the time you listen to this. But they did beat the champs on Monday's Raw. So I would assume they're getting another shot of the belts on Sunday's show at Elimination Chamber, which we just saw the match. We've already seen it 3 or 4 times. Who the fuck could possibly care? We know that Apollo and Titus are not going to win the belts. So why even bother? And I like Apollo, but it's like their tag team is a joke. And they have no other tag teams. Rollins and Jordan, Rollins and Ambrose are no more. You have the Revival. Slater and Rhino are fucking jobbers. Really, who else is there? The Bar, the Club. I mean, you have Anderson and Gallows there, but we've seen them and Sheamus and Cesaro a bunch of times as well, around this time a year ago. So you're going to do the same thing, just replace Enzo and Cass with fucking the Revival? I mean, I guess. I don't know. They really need more tag teams and more creative thought with the tag team division on Raw, because right now it's not working. But if the end game is getting the belts on the Revival, then I'm all for it. His next question, who do you consider to be more attractive, Charlie Caruso or Kathy Kelly? We don't get many of these type of questions on here, but I do appreciate it because it's a good question. Of the two, they're both very attractive. The weird thing with these two, I think, and it's not really a weird thing, but this is how I would classify it as. Charlotte Caruso is more hot. Kathy Kelly is more like pretty, if that makes sense. People play the whole fuck, marry, kill game. If it's just the F and just the M, I would give the F to Caruso and the M to Kathy Kelly. She seems like she's more wifey material. And I know I sound ridiculous right now. I know she sounds more... to me, she looks like she's more wifey material than Charlie Caruso. I've never seen any personality from Charlie Caruso at all on WWE TV. Not even on Total Divas in the few times they've showed her. But goddamn is she hot. So, she's hotter, but I would still go with Kathy Kelly as the more beautiful woman. But again, that's just my 2 cents. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Next question. We may never know now, but how do you think Rich Swann would have done? How would he have fared during his run with WWE if he left 205 Live and went to compete on Raw or SmackDown? Honestly, I think he would have done very well. I think a lot like Cedric Alexander, he's a guy that could do well outside of the Cruiserweight division. He's very talented. On the mic, he's fine. But in the ring, he's really shined, and he had a great run on 205 Live for as long as it lasted. And the guy was a very, he could have been something a lot bigger than what he was. Obviously, it would have taken some time to get that stench off of him, because people don't care about the Cruiserweights right now, despite the recent revamping of 205 Live. It's going to take time for people to start, looking at these people in a different light. But beyond that, Swann would have been a nice mid-card, asset to either Raw or SmackDown if he ever left 205 Live, because the guy's really good. Hopefully with this release, it was mutual, apparently, so, it was probably WWE's decision, and he just agreed, yeah, let me out of my contract early. It's better than sitting home doing nothing for the next X amount of months, years, whatever. So hopefully he cleans up his act, and he comes back down the road, because the guy is really good. But I could have seen him, getting some success. With the deep talent roster right now, he probably would have gone nowhere, but in a perfect world, I think he could have been a fine mid-card talent in either show. Let's see, next couple of questions here from Captain Sunshine. Their first question. Gotta admit I was pleasantly surprised by the 7-man gauntlet match. I expected a standard everyone in the pay-per-view multi-way match faces each other to build momentum match, and I got fascinatedly layered with a 2-hour match with excellent structure, pacing, story, a lively crowd, and individual spotlight moments for everyone. When's the last time a gauntlet match was that good? Honestly, I could not tell you of a single one that was as good as the one that we saw on Monday. Obviously, the longest gauntlet match that I've ever seen, but I thought it was perfect for all the reasons you just mentioned. Story, pacing. The first hour of the match was better than the second. Rollins had an unbelievable outing against Cena and Roman, beating them both clean, which shocked the hell out of me. But great stuff there. He took up the first 2 hours of the show, which you never see nowadays. You absolutely never see that. But what a concept. They filled the time with wrestling. The interviews in between the falls with the people that got eliminated were great too. Everything about this was really, really, really well done. So I really love the way they formatted that on Monday's Raw. Whether we will ever see something like that again remains to be seen, but I would say it was a success, so I would definitely do it again down the road. But nonetheless, other great gauntlet matches, I could not tell you of a single one. I know we got a good one in Lucha Underground a few years ago. It was like Pentagon Jr. and the Black Lotus Tribe or whatever the fuck it was. It was like Pentagon. One of them was Kairi Sane, actually, and a few other women from the Stardom promotion. And Black Lotus, I think her name was, or whatever. She used to be in WWE. I forgot. I think it's Black Lotus. But anyway, they had a great gauntlet match on an episode of Lucha about a year and a half ago. That was really, really good. That I think took up the whole show. Not as long as this one, but it took up, I think, the entire show. I remembered one when I was thinking earlier. We had a gauntlet match on SmackDown, like maybe 3 years ago at this point. It was like Bryan and Roman versus the entire tag team division, and it buried the tag team division, and it wasn't that great, but some of the mini matches were pretty good. Like Bryan and Roman versus like the Usos and teams like that. It was pretty good. It was, pretty decent. But beyond that, it was nothing compared to what we saw on Monday. So that was a great gauntlet match, and might be the greatest gauntlet match of all time, to my memory anyway. Captain Sunshine as well. This might be from Elena the Y. I think I mixed up the names by accident. When did SmackDown become the third best WWE show on a Tuesday? SmackDown is... I miss that must-see feel that it used to have. Like, I would watch, and I still do watch all the shows with my girlfriend and whatever, Raw and SmackDown. We don't really watch NXT together at all. I watch NXT myself. We watch the pay-per-views and stuff together, whatever. But I would always look forward to talking more specifically during SmackDown. Even more so than Raw, because it was shorter, a better show. We haven't had that in like close to a year. And it was always obviously better than 205 Live for a while. But Mixed Match Challenge, it's entertaining. I don't know if I would overrate it over SmackDown, because the matches aren't really always that good on Mixed Match Challenge, but I guess the same can be said for SmackDown too. But now that 205 Live is way better and did a complete, 180 in the last few weeks, it's inferior to 205 Live. SmackDown is. So SmackDown is no longer the best show on Tuesdays. It's second, playing second fiddle to 205 Live, and maybe even third fiddle, as you said, to Mixed Match Challenge. So anyway, yeah, SmackDown has been in a fucking rut for a long time now. We've talked about it time and time and time again here on the show. The rut they've been in, and what can be done to fix it, what can be done to fix it, and all this other shit. But SmackDown it's sad. It's sad when 205 Live becomes more must-see TV than you. That's pretty bad. Next question. I put Captain Sunshine for all these questions, but these were not from Captain Sunshine. These were from Brandon, I think. Sorry, Captain Sunshine, but I'll give you the plug anyway. Brandon A., the first question of his was, what moves do you think would be the most fun to take, the most fun to perform, the most painful to take, and the most painful to perform? Obviously assuming these are all worked moves and not a shoot. Good questions. Let's see, the most fun to take. The stunner would be pretty fun to take, just to say that you did and maybe selling it fucking ridiculously like a Vince or a Shane or a Rock. That'd be pretty fun to take. So I'll say the stunner would be the most fun to take. The most fun to perform, I love the super kick. I've said that before. You guys know that. An RKO too. Love the RKO. I'm sure I'm not the only one, obviously. But doing that would be pretty great. In a professional setting, not in a fucking pool or some shit, as you see on YouTube and whatnot. The most painful to take, the sharpshooter from Bret Hart, the figure four from Rick, because I feel like even though they're worked moves, brother, they could really fucking hurt if they wrenched that shit in. And I get the feeling that they did. So I'm going to say the sharpshooter from Bret and the figure four from Rick. And also maybe the Canadian Destroyer too. That's a great move. Would never want to take it. It looks like he would break your fucking neck. And I'm sure, P.D. Williams would do a great job of protecting you and make sure you don't get hurt. Same thing with the Tombstone. Would never want to take either one of those moves. I'd be so scared of being dropped right on my fucking head and getting paralyzed for life. So, I don't know if it's the most painful to take, but it would certainly be the most scary, in my opinion. And then, the most painful to perform, any high-risk move looks fucking awful to do. Like a shooting star press or a 450. They do it with such ease, and I'm sure their body gets used to it, but I feel like that would fucking hurt. Coming crashing down on a human being from so high up in the air. I don't know if it would hurt more for you or for the person on the ground. Probably the person on the ground is being protected no matter what, because you're putting your hands out, not really fully connecting with them, but it would still hurt. And again, scary to do, especially for someone like me who would go off the top rope. I would never be an aerialist or anything like that. So, again, the most fun to take is stunner. The most fun to perform, either an RKO or a super kick, because they're both pretty simple. The most painful to take, either a sharpshooter, a figure 4, or a Canadian destroyer. And the most painful to perform, a shooting star press, or any high risk move, like a 450 or anything like that. Anything where you have to do flippity doodahs in the air. Keep or erase Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, Alexa Bliss, and Bayley, or Charlotte, Asuka, Nikki Cross, and Ember Moon. Woof, this is tough. It's hard to erase Asuka, because I feel like she can be the biggest star out of all the people you mentioned, and Charlotte already is a big star for them, so I gotta keep them and erase Sasha, Becky, Bayley, and Bliss. And I love them all, but I think Bayley's been damaged. Banks is great, but she's also been, if they turn her heel, it won't really matter, but I would take Asuka over Sasha Banks any day, or Charlotte for that matter, too. And Becky's also great, so it hurts me, it pains me to have to erase Becky, but I feel like the other women have more of an impact, or will make more of an impact on the women's division than the other 4 will. I think Charlotte, Asuka, and to an extent Nikki Cross and Ember Moon can be bigger stars for them than the other 3. I still think Alexa Bliss, and she obviously is a huge star for them, but I would take Asuka or Charlotte over her. Their next question: what are your top 5 matches to happen at Full Sail University? Great question. Number 1, this is in no specific order, but I will say at number 1 right off the bat, Sami Zayn and Adrian Neville from TakeOver Our Evolution was at the time my favorite NXT match of all time. It was soon, replaced by Bayley and Banks and Brooklyn, Revival and DIY, and more recently Andrade Cien Almas and Johnny Gargano. But that was still a phenomenal match, easily up there with one of my favorite NXT matches of all time on one of my favorite NXT shows of all time, Our Evolution. So that would be number 1. But other ones in my top 5 that would be the best that ever happened at Full Sail, also involving Neville and Zayn. Neville and Zayn, Tyler Breeze, and Tyson Kidd, that 4-way from the Fatal 4. I think it was called TakeOver Fatal 4-way from September of 2014. That was an unbelievable main event. A lot of fun there. So that would be in the top 5. Sami Zayn and Cesaro. Any one of their matches? The Arrival match was great. I'm still partial to the 2 out of 3 Falls match, so I would put that in the top 5. Also, Paige and Emma from Arrival. Great show, or great match. Great show too, but great match that really, in my opinion, set forth the women's revolution. I know people might put Charlotte and Natalya in there, and I really like that match. It was a great match, don't get me wrong, but I always enjoyed Paige and Emma more. And then finally, Banks and Bayley did not take place at Full Sail, but their sequel did. The sequel at TakeOver Respect in October of 2015 did, though, the 30-minute Iron Woman match. So I would put on the list, once again, Neville and Zayn, undisputed number 1. The other ones aren't really ranked, but undisputed number 1, Neville and Zayn from TakeOver Our Evolution, Neville, Zayn, Breeze, and Kidd from TakeOver Fatal 4-Way, Zayn and Cesaro from, I think it was an episode of NXT in August of 2013, that 2 out of 3 Falls match, Paige and Emma from Arrival, and Banks and Bayley 2 from TakeOver Respect. After the Rude Mahal Orton segment on SmackDown, the commentators pointed out for the second week in a row that Mahal was the last man standing. I'm not interested in the triple threat because of gender, but would you be more interested if we ended up getting a first time ever triple threat last man standing match where you have to incapacitate both of your opponents for a 10 count especially if the match ended up being really vicious. God, no. Absolutely not. The match itself sounds interesting. I'm not going to deny that. With these three? Good God, that sounds like the cure for insomnia. Bobby Roode, Randy Orton, and Jinder fucking Mahal in a last man standing match. Could you imagine? First of all, the idea of getting both your opponents down for a 10 count sounds convoluted as all fuck, but it could work with the right people. These are far from the right people. This is as wrong as it possibly gets. I'm not saying they're bad wrestlers. Mahal sucks. Orton and Roode are not. They're very good. But as babyfaces, they're not interesting at all. And also together, I'm looking forward to the one-on-one match of Fastlane. I assume it will be turned into a triple threat at some point. Because how do you have Mahal be the last one? I'm not saying I want Mahal in the match, but it just makes more sense. Nonetheless, just having Roode, Orton, and Mahal, who all have very slow, methodic, let's face it, boring styles in the ring, depending on who they're in the ring with, in a last man standing match. The most tedious match stipulation in WWE history. That sounds terrible. So with these three, absolutely not. With any other three, maybe. But with these three, God no. I would rather do anything else or watch anything else than that. And I like Roode and Orton, like I said, but them together, them against each other alone sounds good, albeit boring, but good. Adding Mahal in the mix and adding that stipulation, it sounds atrocious. What was better, Revival 2016 or Usos 2017? I didn't give it the keep or erase format because I love them both so much, I can't have an erase option. That's tough. And I don't blame you for not giving it the keep or erase format because this is tough. The Revival had an amazing year in 2016, as did the Usos. I'm going to go with the Revival, if only because the Usos have always been great, and they've had other very good years too. What made their 2017 so remarkable was the fact that, their promos were awesome, their character work was great, they successfully reinvented themselves. They had a lot of amazing matches with New Day and a few other tag teams. But they've always been great, though. I mean, this was easily their best year yet. But they could have had a great year no matter what. That was just, a great year because of their heel turn and whatnot. The Revival really did just that. The revived tag team wrestling. Not even revived, because tag team wrestling in NXT was never really a priority. But they brought tag team wrestling to an entirely different level in 2016. They got a great match out of Enzo and Cass at the Roadblock show that year. The one in Canada, not the one in, not the Raw pay-per-view. The one in Canada, the one-off WWE Network special. They got a great match out of Enzo and Cass, which speaks volumes. And then the series of matches with American Alpha, and then the matches with DIY, one of which included one of, if not the, best match all year in WWE in Toronto. So I got to go with the Revival. The Usos had a lot of match of the year candidates as well in 2017, but just for what they did for tag team wrestling alone, and again, the SmackDown tag team division really wasn't anything special before the Usos came along and turned heel. But the Revival had just an outstanding year for the many feuds they had, and I don't know, it's really tough. You can't go wrong with either one. I'm just going to say Revival because I feel like before that year, before 2016, no one gave a shit about the Revival. No one really cared about the Usos as babyfaces towards the end, but they were already established. They were already multi-time tag team champions. It didn't really matter. This was merely icing on the cake of already an amazing career. The Revival really came into their own as one of the best tag team wrestling, or one of the best tag teams, period, in the fucking business. So I gotta go with the Revival 2016 over the Usos 2017. Mark S. from Facebook, do you think there will be any surprise winners of either Elimination Chamber match this weekend? No. I think it's going to be Roman Reigns, and I think it will be Alexa Bliss. It would be cool if they swerved us, but it's got to be the right swerve. Like, I don't want fucking John Cena winning the Elimination Chamber. That would be stupid. I'd rather have Roman win, to be honest with you. But even then, I would rather have Rollins win or Balor, even though, they won't. So no, that one's pretty much set in stone. For the women, there is more of a chance that can go really to anyone else but Bliss. But let's dissect it real quick. Rose and DeVille are obviously eliminated right off the bat because they're not winning. Banks and Bayley and Mickie James. Mickie James is not winning. We're not getting Bliss and James again at WrestleMania. So it really comes down to Banks, Bayley, or Bliss. The 3 Bs. And I've said before, I would love to see Banks and Bayley be for the Raw Women's title at WrestleMania. I don't think they're headed in that direction. I'd be shocked if they didn't have Bliss in the card at WrestleMania this year. So I don't think they're having her lose the belt inside the chamber. So I'm going to go with Bliss winning. But if she will drop the belt, it'll likely to be either Banks or Bayley, which would not be the worst thing, because then it would set up either a 3-way, but very likely Banks and Bayley 1-on-1, which it should have been the whole time. But they want to keep the belt on Bliss to do her and Nia Jax for whatever reason, whatever. But I feel like those are the pretty predictable paths they will take in the chamber matches this weekend. So I would put my money on both Bliss and Roman winning if I wanted to put money on it. His second question, if you were in charge, how would you book the Andrade Cien Almas versus Johnny Gargano match this week, where if Gargano does not win the title, he leaves NXT? I'd have it be very similar to their NXT TakeOver match. You could have Almas win clean again, and I'd be fine with that, but I think it would make more sense if you have Ciampa screw the guy. You had Ciampa beat him up after TakeOver Philly, and I thought the way they booked it was perfect. People were saying, oh, you should have had Ciampa screw him in Philly. No, because Almas winning the match clean added a lot to his credibility. A lot to his credibility. If he, cheated to win, or even if Ciampa interfered, the focus would be on him. But they saved it for afterwards. It was the best of both worlds, in my opinion. Now that it's the rematch, and not as big of a stage as TakeOver, you could have Ciampa screw Gargano, and not only, therefore, costing him the NXT title, but also getting him out of NXT. And then maybe they have Gargano come back, and if he beats Gargano, if you haven't beat Ciampa, if the stipulation is where if he beats Ciampa in New Orleans, he gets his job back, or whatever. Or either way, he's gone, but he wants one more match that's unsanctioned on the way out, which I think was rumored at one point. So I assume that's the direction they're going in, but if I was booking it, that's how I would do it. And the thing is, with NXT, I have faith they'll do it right, because it's NXT. Very rarely do they do stuff that I don't agree with. So I think they will probably have Ciampa interfere, and to set up that match for TakeOver coming up a little over a month from now. Also from Mark, push, repackage, release. Sabatelli and Riddick Moss, Oney Larkin and Danny Burch, and the Ely brothers. Release the Ely brothers all day long. That should not even be a question. They fucking suck. Okay, they're not terrible, but they are nothing compared to the other 2 tag teams. And Sabatelli and Riddick Moss are not the fucking next Legion of Doom, but they do have potential, and they've grown on me. So I would push them, and I think they're breaking up, so it doesn't even matter. But I would push them, repackage Lorcan and Burch, and they're great wrestlers, but they're losers. They need some sort of a gimmick or whatever. Sabatelli and Moss, in my opinion, more so Sabatelli than Moss, but they are money. Absolute money. So I would push them, repackage Lorcan and Burch, and then release the Ely brothers. That's a no-brainer. Not even a question. In his next 3 questions, he's got 3 more questions here. Do you think Ronda Rousey will need a manager in WWE, or will she be fine on her own? You know what? It remains to be seen. I've seen her fight before, obviously in the ring. I mean, in wrestling it's going to be different, but her in-ring presence will speak for itself. When she's cutting promos, we'll see. I think it's going to be a very, very, very similar to when Brock came back in 2012, to where they had Brock cutting promos. And in the pre-tape setting, he was awesome, but cutting promos in front of a live crowd. Remember that segment on Raw right before Extreme Rules 2012, where they had like a fucking contract signing or negotiation with Lesnar and John Laurinaitis? It was terrible. It was awful. And literally no more than like 2 or 3 weeks after that, they brought in Paul Heyman to reunite him with Lesnar. They had to, because Lesnar was going to just sink on his own on the mic. So they had to bring back Heyman in order to speak for him. So they could do something similar with Rousey. It's got to work out where, it depends what they do. They could have Lesnar around and still have Heyman be with Rousey. And she can't be a babyface and have Heyman as a manager. We saw that with a few other people. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. So unless they turn her heel after WrestleMania, I mean, she could already be a heel. Who knows? What I got out of her appearance at the Rumble is that she'll be a babyface to start, especially if she'll be facing the Authority at WrestleMania. So I wouldn't put it with Heyman just yet. But if Lesnar does leave after WrestleMania, Heyman is still there in WWE. What do you do with the guy? Well, putting him with Rousey might be the best fit. No one else makes as much sense as a Paul Heyman client, a Paul Heyman guy or girl in this case, which we've never seen before in WWE, would make as much sense as Ronda Rousey. So that's what I would do if she can't speak. Again, we'll find out on Sunday because I assume she will be talking in that contract signing. But we'll see. I mean, I'm not sure if she'll need a manager or not because I've seen her fights. Haven't seen many of her interviews, though, so I don't know if she can talk, but she seems like a good enough shit talker, but she still might need a manager. We'll find out Sunday, though. And his next question here. Do you think there's any chance Dolph Ziggler wins the WWE Championship at Fastlane and co-main event of WrestleMania? And if he did win the title, who would you have him defend it against at WrestleMania? Dude, Shinsuke Nakamura won the Royal Rumble, and he already said he was facing the WWE Champion at WrestleMania. So, I'm not even sure why you asked that question, the second part of your question. The first part of your question is also pretty silly, because he's not going to win. But end of story. Dolph Ziggler is not winning the belt. He shouldn't, and he won't. Next question. Will Seth Rollins get rewarded for lasting so long in the Gauntlet match on Raw this week? I would hope so. That performance was phenomenal. A phenomenal performance from Rollins in that Gauntlet match. So I would be very disappointed if he didn't get rewarded in some form or fashion. People are asking, what do you do with Rollins at WrestleMania? I think someone asked me about a question about that here on the show coming up, which I'll probably talk about. But I would give him a match at WrestleMania with Kurt Angle. If Jordan's out, and even that, maybe it's a blessing in disguise, and I'm sure the match would have been good. But Rollins and Jordan as a WrestleMania match, come on. Let's not kid ourselves here. Rollins and Angle could be really, really good. And if anyone can get a good match out of Angle at this point in his career, it would be Seth Rollins. So I would hope he gets rewarded in the form of a match with Angle at WrestleMania, because that would be money. Ross S. from Facebook. What has been the most enjoyable Talk is Jericho podcast to listen to for you? Very good question. There's been a lot of them. I mean, the show's been around now for about 4.5 years, and I've listened to every single one. I'm sure there's a lot of them I'm not remembering off the top of my head. There was one recently with Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, which was hilarious. Definitely well worth checking out. Anyone with Owens is great, but the one with Owens and Zayn recently together was fucking hilarious. So definitely check that one out. Anyone he's ever done with Christian has also been really, really good. Any of the Batista ones, I think he's had on Batista twice. Once before Guardians of the Galaxy 1, and again right before Guardians of the Galaxy 2. And both were awesome interviews. So any one of those interviews were great. Even some of the non-wrestling ones were also very, very good. The Freddie Prinze Jr. one that he did a few years ago was great. If only to get a in-depth look at, in the mind of what a creative writer went through in WWE, because he used to work on the creative team in the company many years back. So those were really, really good. I'm sure there's many, many more I'm not thinking of. But those were all very interesting. Obviously, the William Regal one I enjoyed because I'm a big Regal fan. The ones with AJ Styles were great. The Talk and Shop episodes are also really, really good. I feel like they're hit or miss with a lot of people. Either you love them or you hate them. I've always enjoyed them, so definitely check those out too. They're with Gallows and Anderson and usually a fourth guest. But those are all very good as well. The whole podcast is worth checking out. Definitely subscribe. Every episode, like I said, I listen to every episode. He had some fucking artist on today. I had no idea who he was, but I enjoy them because Jericho is just a great interviewer. His second question, who do you think will induct Goldberg into the Hall of Fame? I know the rumor is Paul Heyman. I guess if you want to do the whole Brock Lesnar connection there with their history in WWE. But even then, I know Brock is not going to talk to induct Goldberg. So that's why you would have Heyman do it. But I feel like there's better options. One, Eric Bischoff. The guy made a star of Goldberg in WCW as one of the biggest stars that they ever had. So either Eric Bischoff, who It's tough because you had Eric Bischoff there last year to induct. I forgot who it was. Who did he induct? It was someone from WCW. I don't even remember. But Eric Bischoff was there last year. Oh, he inducted Diamond Dallas Page, didn't he? I'm pretty sure he inducted DDP. So to bring him back to do another induction, it's not something you normally see. But speaking of DDP, I might have him do the induction as well. Either Bischoff or DDP, because he gave Goldberg one of his best matches ever in WCW. Those two are very good friends. So DDP would also make a lot of sense. So if it's not Eric Bischoff, then DDP. Heyman I'd be fine with, but I just think DDP is a much better choice. His third question here. With the main event most likely being Reigns versus Brock, where does Seth Rollins fit in at this WrestleMania? Well, like I said, Angle. Kurt Angle makes the most sense as Seth Rollins' opponent at WrestleMania this year, in my opinion. Because if not Angle, then who else? You're going to put him in a multi-man match for the IC title? Who cares? You're going to have him go after the Raw Tag Team titles again? Who cares? You're going to put him in the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal? Who cares? I think the most prominent match for Rollins, who is a big star, coming off his big WrestleMania match with Triple H last year, Kurt Angle. If you want to get Kurt Angle on the card, and as of right now, if Kurt Angle does not face Rollins, there's no place for Kurt on this card at all. This Triple H will likely be locked up in that mixed match tag team match with Rousey. And I guess you could have Angle be Rousey's partner, but I think someone else. I guess that would make sense, but I would rather see Rollins and Angle. So if Rollins does not face Angle after what's been teased and what they've built toward, it doesn't really make any sense. No one else really makes as much sense as Kurt Angle does, so I'm hoping that's the match they're doing at WrestleMania. At RJ_Marceau, what is the end game for the whole Monday Night Rollins persona? Well, on the topic of Seth Rollins, as we get off from the previous question to Mr. Marceau's question, let's see. For Monday Night Rollins, it seems like they're going to try to build him back up to be the face of Monday Nights again, which would be great, because after that performance on Raw, the guy deserves to be a top star. And I know they had him take a little bit of a break from the main event scene by putting him in the tag team division, which was great for a little while, with Ambrose and then with Jordan, but it's time to get him back to where he belongs, in the world title picture. The thing with Monday Night Rollins, it seems like they want... It's weird that they do that, because he's saying it as if he needs to be the top guy again on Raw, but honestly, I see him going to SmackDown after WrestleMania. I think he'd be a great fit on SmackDown. He would be... Him and AJ, take my money. Take my money for Rollins and AJ over on SmackDown. So I would rather have... For Tuesday Night Rollins, that doesn't have as nice of a ring to it, I know, and they just came out that whole new shirt, which would be in the toilet if he went over to SmackDown after WrestleMania, but you know what? It might be a better fit, because on Raw, if Reigns wins the belt at WrestleMania, you could do Reigns and Rollins, because Rollins did pin Reigns on Monday's Raw this past week in the Gauntlet match, but we've seen it before. I doubt they would do it. They're both baby faces. They'll likely do the Ambrose feud when Ambrose gets back, whenever that might be. So, I don't know. They could do Rollins and Ambrose to go back to Ross's question to WrestleMania, but I don't think Ambrose will be back in time, so I don't think that's happening. But yeah, with the Monday Night Rollins thing, I just don't see him becoming champion on Raw anytime soon, because Brock is obviously champion right now. He won't be in the world title match at WrestleMania, and Roman is going to win it, and will likely hold on to it for a while. And we've already seen Reigns and Rollins anyway. So unless you want to put Rollins in the IC title picture, which would be fine, but kind of goes against what his whole mission has been throughout this entire, the last few weeks, and getting back to the main event of Raw, going after the IC title doesn't exactly accomplish that, but it wouldn't be the worst thing. Still, I would put Rollins on SmackDown. It would be Tuesday Night Rollins and not Monday Night Rollins, but I understand that, but I feel like he has a better chance of getting back to that main event level than he does on Raw for the foreseeable future. RJ's second question here. I just rewatched NXT Arrival. Was it a mistake to not put the title on Emma? And do you think not gaining the gold did more damage to her WWE career? Great question. First of all, like I said earlier, I always watch back Arrival on the 1 year, on the anniversary. I said the 1 year anniversary, but I did watch it back on the 1 year anniversary. I watched it 2 years ago. I watched it last year. I think it happened on February 27th. Today's the 21st, so I think next Tuesday I know what I'll be doing then. But nonetheless, I'm looking forward to watching that show back because it was just an awesome show. But when it comes to Emma, really in retrospect, there's no reason why they should not have put that belt on Emma. Because Paige got called up to the main roster anyway, right after WrestleMania. And they had to have known that. It might have been a last-minute thing, but Paige had already done it all in NXT. She had already faced Banks and Summer Rae and obviously Emma on a few occasions. I really thought Emma was winning. Emma was already on the main roster by that point. I wouldn't say that was what did in her WWE career. Putting her with Santino off the bat was not too good. You can rattle off a number of things that killed Emma in WWE. From the waste of time that was the Emelina character, the pairing with Santino early on, the botching of the dancing gimmick on the main roster, which worked in NXT, not so much in the main roster. Keeping her off TV for many months, all this other dumb shit, booking her like a fucking loser last year when she was, clear to compete. She came back as, evil Emma, still booked her like a fucking loser. They killed Emma time and time and time again, so that wasn't what did in her WWE career, but she should have won that match. It did a little bit of damage because at the time, it's like, okay, Paige won. Emma's on the main roster. I would see why they would have Paige win. But Paige became an instant star when she got called up the night at the WrestleMania. Emma was, I think, on Raw that night in a fucking mixed tag team match with Santino against Fandango and Summer Rae. If that's not a fucking indictment on her career in WWE, I don't know what is. That was terrible. That was awful. So yeah, she should have won the belt, stuck around in NXT for a little longer. I know Charlotte kind of took over the top spot on NXT when Emma and Paige were called up, but there's no reason why Emma could have stuck around for a few more months and been the top girl over there. She was in NXT anyway. She made appearances in NXT anyway while she was on the main roster. She didn't do anything there, but she made appearances in NXT well after she was called up. Paige did not, because she was obviously experienced and had success on the main roster. Emma had to crawl back to NXT because they weren't using her right on the main roster. So it was fucking abysmal. But yeah, I think they obviously definitely should have put the belt on Emma. At that point, it would have been a great story because it was Paige who beat Emma to become the inaugural champion in the first place. Many months earlier, excuse me. So it would have made perfect sense. They didn't do it. At the time, it was like, okay, fine, Emma will be fine regardless because that match was outstanding. But they did nothing with her, and they never did anything with her, which is why she was released. Next question from @Jeremy8911 from Twitter. Thoughts on the current rumored after WrestleMania call-ups? So I know they're rumored. First of all, the rumor I think started with @SliceWrestling, that terrible Twitter account. Do not take anything he says as legitimate news. The guy's a fucking goofball. He never sources anything. I don't know why so many people take what he says as the gospel truth. So I know you said rumored, but if no one else reports anything what he says, it's because it's fucking bullshit. And anyway, a lot of the stuff that he said in regards to the post-WrestleMania call-ups, they were all pretty obvious anyway. Doesn't take a fucking rocket scientist to figure out who is being called up next after WrestleMania. So I don't know if they're exactly rumored. It's more so likely. But I think the list of names included Drew McIntyre, Johnny Gargano, Authors of Pain, Ember Moon, and the Iconic Duo. I don't know if Andrade Cien Almas was on the list. I forgot. I tried to look it up. The guy blocked me on Twitter because I called him out on his fucking bullshit. But anyway, I think that's who it included. From what I know, Jeremy tweeted about it too, and he linked me to the tweet. So I think that's what he had said in his tweet. Jeremy is a much more credible source of information than this fucking Slice Wrestling guy is. Just saying. So shout out to Jeremy. But anyway, for all of them, McIntyre is pretty much a lock. I could see him going back to NXT first for a rematch with Andrade, but by the time he's back, Andrade won't even be champion, probably. You could do McIntyre in black at, like, TakeOver Brooklyn or the TakeOver show over Money in the Bank weekend. That'd be pretty cool. But beyond that, I don't think there's any real reason for McIntyre to go back to NXT when you have EC3 there now and Ricochet and Adam Cole. You don't really need him there. Having a little run in NXT before it went back to the main roster was great, but he was there for a few months, won the title. I think he's fine to go to the main roster. So maybe not the night after WrestleMania. I'm not even sure when he's going to be clear to compete again. But it would make sense for him to go back to NXT first for like a one-off match with Aleister Black for the belt, which would be probably a great match. Lose, and then move on to either Raw or SmackDown. Johnny Gargano I've heard a lot of too. I know the rumor is that, he'll probably face Ciampa at TakeOver New Orleans, lose, and then show up on Raw or SmackDown the next night. Or a few nights later over WrestleMania weekend, or go to 205 Live. With the current direction of 205 Live, I feel more confident with him going there as opposed to either Raw or SmackDown first, to be honest with you. I know 205 Live is like the kiss of death for a lot of people, and it was for a while, but under the control of Triple H, I have faith they'll do right by it. So Gargano to 205 Live kind of makes sense, although I would keep Gargano in NXT for a little while longer than WrestleMania to do multiple matches with Ciampa. Have those two go back and forth for a few takeovers leading up to Brooklyn. Then I would call him up. But if they call him up after WrestleMania, that'd be fine, but I feel like they can keep him down there for a little bit longer. Authors of Pain should have been up 6 months ago. Not even sure why they're still in the NXT. I don't know if they're booking a match with them in like War Machine over TakeOver weekend, at TakeOver over WrestleMania weekend. I don't know what the fuck is going on there, but those two should have been on the main roster months ago. Ember Moon, I could see that. They're probably going to book Kairi Sane, Shayna Baszler, and Moon in a three-way at TakeOver, and then you can have Moon lose, and then go to the main roster. That makes sense to me. And the Iconic Duo, same thing. Should have been on the main roster a while ago. The rumor, a legitimate rumor, was that I think they both got boob jobs or something recently. Like, no joke. That was the reason why they haven't been on TV in months. And why they haven't wrestled at independent events, like the house shows for NXT in a while. That would honestly make a lot of sense. And based off pictures I've seen from their Instagram, it definitely checks out, to say the least. So I could see them being called up after WrestleMania. I know NXT has nothing for them. If they're not going to win the belt, especially Peyton Royce, just call them up. Who cares? They might as well. They're very great. They're a great pairing. No pun intended. So they might as well just be called up after WrestleMania. Jeremy's second question, am I the only one that wants to know why Apollo isn't teaming with Tozawa and why Tozawa just stopped being a part of Titus Worldwide for no reason? I was wondering that months ago. The guy won the belt, the Cruiserweight Championship, lost it 6 days later, lost the rematch, and that was it. Apparently Titus Worldwide does not care about you if you're not in the title picture. And that was the only reason why they recruited him in the first place, was because he was part of the Cruiserweight Championship picture. And I honestly kind of liked him part of Titus Worldwide. I know they're a joke stable, but it's not like Akira's doing anything anyway. And he has great chemistry with Cruz. They're good friends. They were a tag team on the Indies. It made perfect sense. Yeah, so it should be Apollo and Akira as a tag team. It should not be fucking Titus Worldwide, which is a joke. Titus sucks. As a manager, he's fine. In the ring, he sucks. So it should be Apollo and Akira as a tag team, not fucking Apollo and this goof. At Lily Reynolds, is Finn Balor main event quality, and is he over? I think he is. I would say he's over. He gets a pretty big reaction. Pretty good reaction anytime he's out there. Is he main event quality? Again, I would argue as well. Probably not on Raw. He should be, but he won't be probably anytime soon. So I could see him going to SmackDown and winning the belt over there. Next couple questions as we wrap up here. Don't have too much time, so I'm going to have to breeze through the next number of questions. But anyway, at the average grunt from Twitter, who is the best frog splash and who has the worst frog splash out of all these guys? Art Barr, Eddie Guerrero, D'Lo Brown, Rob Van Dam, Chavo Guerrero, Kevin Owens, and Seth Rollins. Best? Never seen an Art Barr frog splash. I know, kill me, but I don't think I've ever seen one, so I can't speak for him. Eddie Guerrero had a great frog splash, so I'll say Eddie. Worst? They're all very good. Maybe KO. I know it looks good when he does it because he's bigger, obviously, so it has more of an impact, but his frog splash is not any of the other frog splashes. Even Rollins, he's gotten a lot better with his frog splashes, and they look great. So I'd put Owens as the worst of those that you mentioned, and Eddie is the best. His second question, have you thought about ranking all of Undertaker's WrestleMania matches like you did with the WrestleMania main events? Yeah, John and I did that 3 years ago at this point for nextwrestling.net, my website. And it was a lot of fun. It took a lot of work and a lot of time, but it was a lot of fun. I would love to do that after Taker is officially retired and we can, officially take in all of his matches and not leave out one that hasn't happened yet. And, we'll find out in the next couple of weeks. If he's not at WrestleMania 34, then we will do that. I mean, I'd have to ask John or someone else. I would love to do it with anyone, really, for the website. But that's a great article idea, though, so maybe at some point. And as third question, what if Triple H stayed on SmackDown in 2004? Evolution would have broken up prematurely. Would Batista have broken out? You know what? I was just thinking about that. Would Batista have broke out the same way that he did if he didn't turn on Triple H in early 05? I don't think he would have. So that would have changed a lot. It's probably for the better that Triple H did not stay on SmackDown in 04 when he was drafted there. He was immediately traded back to Raw, but it was probably for the best. We would not have gotten JBL as a main eventer, which may have been a good thing because they needed heels on SmackDown at that point. Triple H would have filled that void just fine. So, if Triple H is not on SmackDown, if he is on SmackDown rather, then we have no JBL and likely no Batista. And would John Cena have broken out the same way that he did? Would Triple H have done the honors for Cena at WrestleMania 21 the same way that he did for Batista that same year? Probably. I'm not even really sure. So that's a great theoretical question, but it would have changed a lot. Maybe not for Cena, but definitely for JBL, and absolutely for JBL, and probably for Batista as well. At Scarlet1 from Twitter, did you hear the rumor that Apollo Crews lost his last name because Vince does not want to hear anything similar to the name of Nicholas Cruz, the Florida school shooter? Yeah, I heard rumors about that, about Terry Crews, and the Terry Crews thing has been... Terry Crews has always had that name, so it has nothing to do with Terry Crews. With the school shooter thing, yeah, the timing would check out. He's been Apollo Crews for like 3 years now. Why now? The week after a school shooting? I could see that being the case. Honestly, I could see that being the case. And I don't blame them. I mean, it's dumb when they cut off last names like that or first names, but whatever. It's not that big of a deal. It's really not, but I understand why they would have done that, though. Their second question, what's 1 year when Raw and SmackDown were even or on the same level of quality, good or bad? 2000, they were probably both very, very good from what I've seen. SmackDown was not brand exclusive at that point, but it was still a very good show to watch, in addition to Raw. 2006, I feel like Raw and SmackDown were on the same quality level. They were both just kind of there from what I've seen. They weren't great. They weren't terrible. They were both just kind of there. 08 as well. 08, they were both kind of... I thought they were both very good in 08. Raw had Jericho and HBK, and SmackDown had Edge and Undertaker. So I thought they were both in the same playing field in 08. In 2012, Raw and SmackDown were just abysmal by and large. Kind of the same thing every week. And the brand split was pretty much dead by that point. But Raw and SmackDown were very formulaic for most of 2012 and 2013 and 2014. But I think more important stuff happened on SmackDown around 2012 than in 2013 or 2014. Push 1, Repackage 2, Release 4. Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, John Cena, Elias, Finn Balor, The Miz, and Braun Strowman. I'd push Strowman. The guy's a star. They need to capitalize on that. Repackage Rollins and Reigns, because I'm not going to keep both Cena and Reigns, and Cena's a part-timer anyway, so get rid of Cena. Keep Reigns, but turn him heel. And Rollins and Balor are interchangeable. I'm trying to think who could be a bigger star for them. I feel like Rollins is just better overall than Balor is, so I would repackage him, release Balor, but I would not complain if you had it the other way around. Release Elias, who I like, and release Miz, who I love, but they're not as big of priorities as the other people I mentioned. And final two questions. At Brad Berdar from Twitter, thoughts on the theme song for the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view? Not a fan. The same people. It was the same artist who sang the song for Fastlane the last few years. I do not like the rap songs and the hip hop shit, unless it's by Flo Rida. The guy's grown on me, but beyond that, not a big fan of his theme songs. Of the songs he provides for pay-per-views, Will Rush or whatever his name is, not Leo Rush, whoever sang the song for this year's installment of Elimination Chamber. I'm not a big fan of the theme song. And last year's was not good either, so it's not like we have a recurring theme of great songs for the pay-per-view. They're usually pretty forgettable. And last question, was Austin Aries' WWE run a failure mainly because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, like he was in NXT? They were already pushing other stars, or when he was on 205 Live when Neville was unstoppable, or because they never saw him as a top guy. Probably a little bit of both, because if they saw him as a top guy, they wouldn't have cut him. They could find other roles for Austin Aries. And he didn't leave on his own. He said outright himself. That was another podcast I also really enjoyed. The one with on Talk is Jericho with Chris Jericho. That was another one I really, really liked. He said outright on that podcast with Jericho, he was released. They had nothing for him, which blew my mind, but whatever. So they never saw him as a top guy. He could have been at least a mid-carder, but they didn't even want to do that, which was fucking stupid. But anyway. But yeah, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was never brought in to be the guy in NXT. Like I said earlier, never. And on 205 Live, he could have been that guy, but they weren't going to interrupt the reign of Neville for Austin Aries. They did for Akira Tozawa, which was interesting, and not for Aries, but whatever. But yeah, they probably were not as high on Aries as Triple H was when he brought him into NXT, and then he was let go. So they never saw him as a top guy. They never really, saw him as the guy in NXT or even 205 Live, which is a shame because he could have been a top cruiserweight champion for that brand considering how damaged it would become over the months that followed, but whatever. He's now the Impact World Champion, for better or for worse, but at least he's doing well outside of WWE. So anyway, guys, thank you for checking out episode 221 on 221. I still can't get over how incredible that is, but I'm probably the only one on February 21st, 2018. But nonetheless, guys, thank you for checking out the show. If you want to send in a question, tweet me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Leave a comment on the post. I usually put them on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question in the comment section down below on this very video. I'll include it in next week's edition. So, nevertheless, guys, have an awesome rest of your week. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. We'll be back right here next Wednesday with another edition of hashtag AskGSM. Until then, be well, and I'll catch your ass down the road.